Happiness is a way of travel. Sadness helps me cope with sad things in my life and sad things happening.
So it's okay to be sad.
Absolutely.
Mr. Cormier is a retired psychotherapist with over 35 years of experience.
We are all looking for external proof of our internal experience. People tend to create what they try to avoid. Do your worst. Say exactly what you feel. Be as mean and as ugly as you need to be. Use curse words. I don't care. Write the most awful letter saying what you feel and then tear it up.
Do you think that we need to wait until we completely heal and then try to be in another relationship?
How you treat me is going to tell me exactly how you feel about me, not the word. My interpretation is love is how you treat somebody. It's not the words. I can use words forever. I love you so much I couldn't live without you. Oh my God, you're my entire world. And then I can be abusive. Depression is like a voice that doesn't belong there. It's not your voice. You think it's your voice because the voice of depression will always take you one step back. I suffered from major depression in my teens.
Welcome to the Emotional Reset Podcast. I'm Dr. Ketaki Pawar Chavan, founder and director of Taught Simplified, a life coach and the author of The Emotional Reset. Today we are diving deep into emotional healing with someone whose life and work have deeply inspired me. It's an absolute honor to introduce our guest, Mr. Rick Cormier. Mr. Cormier is a retired psychotherapist with over 35 years of experience. He's also the author of 7 insightful books, including the touching and humorous Mixed Nuts and the deeply personal My Life Didn't Always Crack Me Up, and the beautifully written American Bapu, India Through My Eyes, which is especially close to my heart. But he's so much more than an author and a psychotherapist. Mr. Cormier is also a passionate drummer, a craftsman who makes his own drum mallets, and a loving husband who enjoys cooking with his wife at their Santa Fe home. You know, I feel so lucky that you could be here in India, and coincidentally in the same month that I'm launching my book, The Emotional Reset, because it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to have the person who wrote the foreword for my book and interview him so that our viewers could learn so much more about psychotherapy and how to handle their emotions.
Thanks.
So there's this question that I think a lot of people would have. It's been said that if you think negative thoughts, you are more likely to attract negative circumstances into your life, especially in books that talk about the law of attraction and manifestation. I also follow it to an extent. And ever since I realized that negative emotions matter also, I've been having this question, or you can say confusion. Do we have to think positive thoughts all the time in order to attract good into our life?
I don't think it's that simple. I think most people get it wrong. When people think about happiness, they imagine that they're climbing a mountain and there's a plateau at the very top of the mountain. And when you reach that plateau, you'll be happy.
Right.
Like permanently happy. And that's not real. We're never permanently happy. Happiness, to me, happiness is a way of travel. It's an attitude, it's a choice that we make. If I make the choice to be happy, there are still going to be reasons to be sad. There are still going to be reasons to be angry. I'm still going to find reasons to be anxious and scared. It's not like now I'm happy, I'll never feel another negative emotion. That's unrealistic. I will feel negative emotions. The difference is I will know how to cope with them. I'll know how to cope with those emotions. I'll become resilient. And once those emotions have done their job, I'll move past it.
So it's okay to be sad.
Absolutely. It's how we heal. It's how we heal from sad things happening.
What I'm afraid of is I would attract negative circumstances
Mm-hmm.
that would make me even feel even worse
Mm-hmm.
if I spend a day in sadness,
Mm-hmm.
because they teach you that your thoughts attract all these things to
Mm-hmm.
you. What do you think about it?
I think it's wrong. I don't
Ah.
agree. Um, um, Happiness, sadness, fear, anger, these are all normal human emotions. They exist to help us deal with life, they exist to help us cope with life. I can't bet all my money on happiness and pretend that nothing sad will happen. I will lose people. I will never be fearful. I will be fearful. You know, every time something comes up that I really care about, I'll be nervous about it. Is that negative? Am I buying into something negative? Or do I know myself and do I know how I'm going to deal with that emotion? And it's the same with anger. Anger is kind of a catch because sometimes we get anger wrong. We can express anger wrong. I can tell somebody, I don't appreciate what you did. I don't appreciate what you said. Or I could take my fist and put it in their face. That's inappropriate. That's an inappropriate expression of anger. So I have to learn what's appropriate. How can I express anger in a way that's not hurtful and harmful? And
Mm.
you know, um, but those emotions are going to happen, and I don't see them as negative emotions any more than if I was sick and the doctor said just take this medicine and you'll be better. That I think of the medicine as this negative thing because if it makes me better, then it helped me cope with the illness. Just like sadness helps me cope with sad things in my life and sad things happening. The same as anger helps me cope with things that make me angry. They're coping skills. They're normal. They're natural.
Mhm.
So I don't see them as like these are the good guys and these are the bad guys of the emotions. We need them all because life is going to challenge us.
Right. So instead of chasing happiness, maybe we should prioritize positivity or being a positive person, as they are more likely to see the positives that are happening in their life.
Mm-hmm.
You worked as a psychotherapist for over 35 years. So, can you tell me what is one thing that therapy teaches that normally people don't realize?
Yeah, that emotions are normal. They're okay. When something happens that makes us sad, the emotion of sadness exists to help us get past it. Um, Anger, things are going to anger us. Anger's tricky because you can express it wrong. It's
Hmm.
one thing for me to say, "Hey, I didn't appreciate what you did or what you said." It's another thing to take my fist and express the same emotion. Um, the more interesting one is anxiety, because a lot of times when people feel anxiety, they avoid it because they think anxiety is a bad thing.
Hmm.
And so, I see a girl that I think is attractive and I like her personality and I'd really kind of like to get to know her, but anxiety comes into the picture and I avoid it altogether. I'm not even going to talk to her.
Hmm.
Here's a job that I really, really, really want. And I could interview for that job, but I get nervous in interviews, and that defines the whole thing. I'm not going to apply for the job because I get nervous in interviews, and I need to avoid that nervousness. The trick is, we only get anxious about things we care about.
Yeah.
So if I'm anxious about an interview because I really want that job and I avoid it, I'm avoiding a job that I really want. And what I've found is that fear can be a roadmap because fear is, I don't mean, that you shouldn't be afraid of a lion, about to attack you. That's a real fear, but when your fear involves, when your reaction to fear involves separating yourself from an anxiety producing situation, it's a shame, because you can use your fear as a roadmap to what you really want, to do, what's really important to you. And people miss that. All they know is, oh no, that makes me nervous, so I don't do that.
Yeah.
And they don't look at, oh, what makes you nervous? Why? How come that? Why is that even important? And it's usually because it's important to the person. It's that whole theory of being outside your comfort zone. I've spent half my life outside my comfort zone, because I know how that works.
So I always tell my clients that you can think of negative emotions as messengers, just like we get notifications on our phone that you have low battery and you need to charge. So negative emotions just have something to tell you. It's a signal. Absolutely. Like a message on your phone.
Yep.
So
I agree completely.
In the emotional reset, I've written that when you are under the spell of negative emotions, it's difficult to find happiness and motivation. So what do you think a person should do in this case?
I suffered from major depression in my teens. My answer was I let myself go there. I let myself get into that. And in doing so, I figured out how much of my depression was being caused by me. I was so used to being a victim, that this is all happening to me. And I got into it and said, oh, wait, no, because I'm kind of doing this wrong and I could do that better. And the thing with depression is that depression is like a voice that doesn't belong there. It's not your voice. You think it's your voice because all your life there's only your thoughts and your feelings. And then along comes this illness where suddenly, when you're 4 years old and somebody says, oh, here, there's nice broccoli. And you look at it and you say, I don't like it. And you say, no, you never tried it. And a 4-year-old will tell you, I don't like it. You should try it anyway. I don't want to. That's what depressed people do. Depressed people think kind of like 4-year-olds, where they think, I don't feel like doing this. You call me up and you say, hey, a bunch of us are going out and, to a restaurant, which should be fun. And my heart says, nah, I don't feel like it. And I'm really listening to the voice of the depression. That's not my own voice, and it's not even on my side. Because what depression does, how it works, is it separates you from the two things that we live for, and that's people and activity.
Okay.
That's why we woke up this morning, because there are people and activity in our life. And so one way of beating that is making sure, when that voice says you don't want to go out, you don't want to do something, but then you wind up watching TV all night with a tub of ice cream on your stomach, kicking yourself because you're not out with your friends having fun. And that's what depression does, and that's how it works. And so, the way to prevent sadness from going there is to make sure that you stay plugged in to people and activity.
Right.
Because once you start avoiding it because I don't feel like it, it's winning.
So how does a depressed person understand the difference between his own thoughts and these thoughts that you're saying are not yours?
Easy. Picture yourself and where you're at, and picture where you want to be. Okay? Which decision will take you one step in that direction, and which decision will take you one step back?
Okay.
Because the voice of depression will always take you one step back. The step forward is often harder because you've got this voice telling you, you don't feel like it. Yeah, the best thing isn't always what you feel like.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing is just the best thing, and it's a harder decision, especially when you've got this feeling that says, oh no, you want something else. Because if that feeling is going to separate me from people in activity and have me sitting around by myself criticizing myself, this is not my friend. This is not advocating for me. So I think that's a trick that I've often given clients is, where do you want to be? Now you've got a choice. Which choice is going to take you this way and which one will take you that way? That's always going to be easier. Because the depression will always love that.
Yeah. And
So,
most people also assume that if they are sad, they are depressed.
right. And no.
No.
No, sadness is sadness. If I get fired from my job, if I lose something, if I get robbed, I'm sad because there's a tangible loss. If I'm sad on a chronic basis and there isn't really a reason for it except I'm just sad, it's a good chance I'm depressed, or at least I'm heading there. Sadness always has a reason. Depression doesn't. Depression often doesn't have a reason. It's just an illness that gets into you, and it's hard to deal with because of the fact that we're not used to having this other voice. We just assume these are my feelings I'm reacting to. I don't feel like going out. Well, those are my feelings. Well, what if they're not? What if I'm going to spend the rest of the evening criticizing myself? How is that helping me?
So that's how you recognize if you have it or not.
Yep. Which direction is it taking you in?
Yeah. That could be a first step towards knowing that you need therapy.
Yeah. I'll give you another example. If I listen to the voice of depression and I stay home and just avoid everything, how will I feel after? If I go out with my friends, how will I feel after?
Good.
Completely different. Okay. Yeah. One, I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm going to feel a little more confident, a little more self-esteem. I'm going to feel a little more relaxed because I was out with my friends and had a good time. But if I stay home and sit on the couch watching TV, I'm not going to come away feeling like, oh, look at me, look at what I did.
So I had a coaching client and she told me that she just got out of a 5-year relationship. And I told her, before you enter another relationship, it's better if you use this alone time for yourself to heal your inner wounds maybe. And later I thought, does this really matter? What if she got a really nice guy? Is it my place to tell her what to do and what not to do? And what if the relationship brings out all kinds of issues that she can then recognize? I mean, a relationship can help you find your weak spots. So, do you think that we need to wait until we completely heal and then try to be in another relationship?
Nope. Relationships can be very healing, and if someone accepts you as you are, positives and negatives, flaws and strengths, someone accepts you as you are, it's important to understand that a lot of our negative behaviors started out as defensive reactions to something stressful or someone stressful. We have a parent, a playmate, a sister, a brother who gives us a hard time, and we build a shell, we build a defense. The problem is now that threat is gone, but we're stuck with the defense. If someone loves me just the way I am, I'm not going to need that defense anymore. I don't even have to think about it, but suddenly I find myself in a position of feeling loved as is. And what I've noticed in people is those defenses, those negative behaviors start just dropping off. not because I did therapy for them, but because someone loves them and accepts them exactly how they are. When I met my wife 45 years ago, I wasn't perfect, neither was she.
Yeah.
And yet here we are, you know.
Yes.
And a lot of that hinged on the healing power of loving somebody as is, not I love you, but I wish you were like this instead, you know, or I wish you should change this and change that. And in fact, I have a list. Let me show it to you. You know, that's very healing. Love is
Yeah.
very healing.
So the reason I told her to do this was I thought if she has not healed herself yet, she has some emotional issues, then she would probably attract a partner who is not right for her at that stage of her healing. And if she gets better, more positive, with the positive outlook, she can recognize the guy who is right for her. So that was
Sure.
my
No, I
reason.
understand. Yeah. You know, the times when I feel like that is when, you know, someone is in a relationship for a couple of years, they break up, and the person already, you know, like 2 weeks later, is looking for a replacement. That's bad. I always discourage that, because what's going to happen is you're going to find a great guy or a great woman, and every conversation is going to be about your ex.
Right.
And it's like pest repellent for dating, you know. Nobody wants to hear, you know, for the 20th time how awful your ex was. And yet you need to say it. And I get it. But that's not the time for dating. And that's one time that I feel exactly the same way. No, wait. You need to figure yourself out first.
Yeah.
Because you're not suitable for dating until you get your stuff together, you know.
So let's say after a breakup, how long should a person wait?
Depends on the person. You know, I would say minimum 4, 5, 6 months minimum.
Ooh.
And if it took you a year, I'd say great.
Yeah.
But minimum 4, 5, or 6 months. It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the person, because some people figure it out quicker than others, but some people get their acts together quicker than others. And so you can't say, well, this person was ready after 3 months, so you should be ready. No, I'd love if everything worked that way. They wouldn't need us.
Yeah.
You know? If everything was so tangible, you know, it's not like changing a tire, you know?
Right. So the person should have that much patience to work on themselves.
Yep.
And that would lead to good outcomes in the future.
Yep. Even if you talk to your friends, go to your friends, tell your friends what a monster he or she was.
Yeah.
Because you're expressing it, you're getting it out. But, you know, to meet some ideal person and use that person to express that doesn't end well. It ends quickly, but not well.
But you know, that is also a very vulnerable time for a person, and they tend to get into a relationship quickly with whoever they find, no matter if it is the right person or wrong person.
I agree.
So how do they avoid this?
By not getting into a relationship at all,
So
just yet.
it's like a personal choice.
Yeah, if you still need to vent about all of that, you're not ready.
Right.
That's why I say, even talk to your friends, your parents, I don't care, but you've got to express that, and don't do it with that ideal person.
Yeah,
Do
you
you
might
know?
push your ideal partner away.
Yeah, that's what it tends to do, you know. It's if every time we get together, you know, that's all you talk about, you know, I'm going to be like, you know, she wants to go out tonight, you know, do I want to listen to more of that, or, you know, and it could be a marriage made in heaven. It could be the perfect partnership, but at the wrong time.
Got your point.
Yeah.
I have to ask you this because I have dealt with this client. She was not able to move on from her ex. And even though she hated him a lot, and she still had the things that he had gifted her around, including a ring. And when I told her that you need to remove it, she said, I just can't get it out. I need it to be here. Even though I know I don't like him, I want to move on, but I'm not able to. So, what do you think this is? Is it like she wants to identify with the pain and she's more familiar with it, so she's resisting healing in this way?
I don't think it's so much as identifying with the pain as it is identifying with the relationship, the emotions. You can, I find this a lot with abused women, where they can't wait to get away from the abuser, and they do, and that's great. But where the snag comes in is that they have been trying to please this person for a long time, and they have been getting what little affection they get from that person for a long time, and they're kind of dependent on that, even though there's not much to it, even though it's fairly empty. You get addicted to that from someone. And so now you decide, okay, this is a toxic relationship, I'm out of here. And you think, oh, good, all right, everything's going to be fine now, but I don't have him to tell me this or to do that, and I don't have him, and I'm so used to pleasing him, and now I have nobody to please. And it becomes a tug of war between I'm glad to get away and it hurts to be away.
So I didn't even realize that she could be in an abusive or toxic relationship. I just thought it was like a weakness of the mind that you can't get over somebody. It's fairly common. And this could be one of the reasons you're addicted to that. So what should I tell her to move on?
I used to tell abuse clients to remember the bad stuff. Write it down. Write down when it really, really hurt. And when you're feeling torn, take a look, because that was it at its worst.
Yeah.
And remind yourself, that's him. That's who you're considering. Is the guy who did this and this, the guy who said that and said that and said that, the guy who treated you this way. You've heard me say before, that my interpretation is love is how you treat somebody. It's not the words. I can use words forever. I love you so much I couldn't live without you. Oh my God, you're my entire world. And then I can be abusive, and I can be neglectful. Love is how you treat somebody. And when we date, we can only behave for so long. Even the worst abuser can behave for so long. He can be charming, be wonderful, and once he gets comfortable, once he feels like he's got you, like you're dependent on him, and he feels safe that you're not going anywhere, now you get to meet him for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's when the worst of it starts. Love is how you treat someone is kind of about how long can you hold that up? Because long term, how you treat me is going to tell me exactly how you feel about me, not the words. Words are easy. How you treat me is the indicator of how you feel.
Right. And here's the funny part. What these abusers do is they don't let you forget about them.
Oh no, that's true. That's very true. Yep.
So he kept calling her, even though he was in another relationship, telling her that we could still talk.
See, and that's a control issue. All abusers are underneath it all controllers. And so if we break up and I find somebody else, it's going to make me feel clever and powerful to keep you on the hook just a little bit.
So do they realize what they're doing?
No.
No.
No. It's automatic. It's like breathing.
Oh.
And if you tell them what they're doing, they're not
doing.
going to hear you. There's no insight. We can put him in jail. He's going to be the same way when he gets out. He can have 10 relationships end the same way, he still won't get it. Because if you ask him what happened, he'll tell you what was wrong with the first woman, what was wrong with the second one, what was wrong with the third one. And he's got it down to detail, what monsters they all were.
Yeah.
The one thing he doesn't see was the lowest common denominator, which was him.
Right. So it's up to us to recognize that behavior. Here's another thing that gets people thinking. Is forgiveness overrated?
No, I don't think so. Because if I feel anger or resentment toward you, it hurts me more than it hurts you.
Right.
You're out here living your life. And I'm stewing. I'm obsessing over you or what you did or what you said. That hurts me more than you. You're out here living your life. You're doing your thing. Somebody said once, and I love the line, but somebody once said, revenge is like a poison that you drink, hoping that the other person will die.
Yeah. Right. That explains it.
Yep.
And still, my clients always tell me that they can't forgive this other person because he doesn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try to tell them is he doesn't deserve it, but do you deserve the peace that comes with forgiveness?
That's exactly it. That's exactly right.
And in my book, I give people choices. Like, if you want to forgive, this is what you do. If you don't want to, like, sometimes you might not be ready. Somebody might have done something really awful, and that cannot be forgiven. Like, you might have heard of some of the crimes. And so, is it okay to not forgive?
I don't know. It depends on the circumstance. I've seen people who resented their parents because their parents were terrible parents and they mistreated them or they neglected them, and so now the parent is in their 90s, and the client is in their 60s or 70s, still hating the parent because of what the parent did, and sometimes they'll come to me and they'll say, should I confront them? Should I tell them what they did? And I'll always say, depends. What are you expecting? Are you expecting an apology? Are you expecting a 94-year-old to change their behavior because of something that they did when they were in their 20s or 30s? It depends on what you want. And one of the tricks that I often used to give people is write a letter and do your worst. Do your worst. Say exactly what you feel. Be as mean and as ugly as you need to be. You use curse words. I don't care. Write the most awful letter saying what you feel, and then tear it up. Burn it. I don't care. You don't send it. You don't save it. Because the whole purpose is getting those emotions out. That's the whole exercise, is getting the emotion out of there. And you get it out.
So I guess forgiveness does not depend on the other person. And just like happiness, it is an inside job.
Yes.
But lately I've been trying to reconnect with my hobbies and even find new ones. And that's something we have in common. You have always explored your passions, and just like drumming, writing, photography, cooking. And so do you think having hobbies is good for your emotional health?
Absolutely. We all talk about work as if we just work for the paycheck. I show up at work, I do my thing, I get the paycheck, I go home. But work is more. Work gives me self-confidence. Work gives me a feeling of competence. It gives me a feeling of growth because I'm able to do something quicker than 5 years ago when I took the job. There's a progression that I feel. Retirees, like myself, retirees often go home and watch TV. Now, granted, they're not getting the paycheck, but Where's the confidence? Where's the competence? Where's the growth? It's missing. If you have hobbies and interests, you stay busy and you get to do stuff, and you do get the feeling of competence and confidence. There was a woman I saw one time. She was a cashier at, I think, a Walmart. Hated her job, but she didn't have many skills, and that's the job she got, and they paid her, and she did the job. And when we were talking, she said she always wanted to be an actress. And I asked her, have you ever considered like doing community theater? And she's like, well, what's community theater? And I said, well, a group of people that get together, they take on a play and they act it out in front of an audience. Oh, yeah, I don't know if that sounds that good. And I said to her, so do you want to act, or do you want to be a famous actress? Because there's a difference. Because if you want to act, I can tell you where to go and what to do and how to go about it. But if you want to be a famous actress, can't help you. But you need to figure that out. And I think that's where some people are at, is that as soon as they're not working, there's nothing else. They work, they come home to their husband, to their wife, and what? Sit and wait for supper, sit and watch TV all night, and then go to bed. I, like you said, you and I, it's one of the things we have in common. My son too. So many interests, so many skills at things, so many things you love to do that are your passions. For me, when I drum, I don't care if somebody pays me. I've played for free. Somebody says, yeah, there's a job and I'm in. And somebody says, oh, we want you to drum in a parade, $450. I'm in. Because I'm going to have the same experience. I'm going to have a great time.
Yeah.
If one pays and one doesn't pay, that's not why I'm drumming. And it's the same with writing books, and it's the same with photography. I'm not doing it chasing a paycheck. I'm doing it because I love to do it, and I get better, and I feel competent, and I feel confident, and all of those other things. That's important.
I have a friend who plays guitar.
Yeah.
And he plays very well. So I told him, why don't you pursue it like a career?
Yeah.
And he was like, if I turn it into my career,
Yep.
then it wouldn't be my hobby anymore. It's not fun anymore.
Yep. That was how I felt. When I sang and played guitar, and I wrote a bunch of original songs, and I had a local success. I had a real good local success. And people often will ask me, why didn't you pursue it? Why didn't you keep going? And my answer was because I wanted a wife, a car, a house. I wanted health insurance. And I wasn't willing to gamble it all on music. I knew I would play music for the rest of my life, and I will, and I do.
Yeah.
But I wanted something steady and stable with a regular paycheck. Now my son, in contrast, my son did gamble it all on music. He's in like 3 touring bands that are successful. He owns his own record label with about 30 musicians and artists under his record label. He did what I chose not to do. And I'm behind him 100%.
That's great.
But it's that difference. I mean, I knew for me, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bet it all on music. I do love, this is why I understand where your friend is coming from, is for me, it's fun. It's a fun thing. And I don't care if you give me money for it or not.
Yeah. And that's why I tell my clients to include a hobby or go back to your old hobbies from childhood.
Yep.
Or find new ones, because unless you try something, you will never know whether you're good at it or not.
Yep.
And it adds some kind of fun into your life, which improves your happiness level. You get to meet people with the similar interests.
Yep.
So that's a plus. And so I use it as a tool for my clients.
Yeah.
And now I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is. My dad, before he retired, And he was nothing like me. I'm much more like my mother. But my dad was this just grumpy kind of guy. And he never had an interest. He never had a hobby. He he made his lunch first thing in the morning. He took his bicycle to work at a factory. Um, he came home expecting food to be on the table, all ready for him. And he read his newspaper, fell asleep with it on his head, kind of like a pup tent on his head. And that was his life. And then finally went to bed and did the same thing the next day. And when he was talking, when he was in his 60s, and he was telling my brother and I about his plans to retire, my brother and I said, what's he going to do? He's got no hobbies. He's got no interests. What's he going to do? Like watch TV and drink alcohol?
Yeah.
And but at the last minute, it was just the funniest thing. He retired. He started fishing. He started volunteering, all kinds of programs. And it was like, wow, that's not the guy I grew up with, you know? And I mean, thank God, because I've treated so many retirees who, after, give them like 2 years of retirement, and they have all the symptoms of depression. And they come to me because they have depression. They go home to a wife that they hardly even have a relationship with because they've over-identified with their job their whole life.
Right.
So it's like coming home to a virtual stranger, And then you find out, the guy retired and he sits in his easy chair and watches TV and drinks. Well, of course you're going to be depressed. That's a depressed lifestyle.
Right.
So
hobbies are really important.
Very, very, very important.
At any age.
At any age, absolutely.
Let's go a bit deeper now. So what does emotional freedom mean to you?
I think emotional freedom is recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses and accepting yourself as is. I think it involves knowing how to handle your emotions, knowing how to deal with your emotions is a big part of it. We will always have critics. There will always be someone waiting to tell you what's wrong with you. And I think part of emotional freedom is the ability to recognize that those criticisms say more about the critic than it says about you. And there is a tendency to do the opposite. Someone criticizes me and I think, oh, really? Oh my God. I'm like, and usually it's more about the person that's doing the criticizing. I think if we have emotional freedom, we stop people pleasing.
Right.
Because a lot of people do people pleasing. I have one personality with you. I have another personality with him, another with her. So which is me? And I've always felt like if I'm myself, I will attract the right people and I will repel the wrong people.
So could it be that emotional freedom is similar to self-love?
I think self-love is a huge part of it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Accepting your flaws and imperfections.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And knowing everybody has them. And perfectionists are some of the most unhappy people I know. Because they're never going to get there.
Right. So if you saw that lack of self-love in somebody, what would you suggest that person?
What I mean, I used to tell people to make a list of their strengths and their weaknesses, and see me next week, because I don't want you to do it off the top of your head. I want you to sit and think about it. I want you to tear yourself apart before you make that list, because people miss the good stuff. People miss, they see the flaws, they see what's wrong with them, they see what everybody tells them what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
and they don't think about what their strengths are. And I think you have to start by getting people to think about their strengths.
It's like knowing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember a story where if one of my clients is not understanding this concept, what I say is, if somebody came up to you and criticized you like this, look, I really don't like your blue hair,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't have blue hair,
Yeah.
so you are less likely to get upset over it
Mm-hmm.
because you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same way
Mm-hmm.
you say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. What's tough is it's not always the blue hair. The tough ones are when somebody says, "I don't like when you do this," and it's something you
Oh,
actually do.
yeah, that has
Um,
happened to me.
right? That's tougher, but the answer is the same. The answer is the same. Yes, I have flaws. Yes, I'm imperfect.
So acknowledge it and try to improve.
Or acknowledge it and focus on your strengths.
Hmm.
I don't have to improve.
Yeah, you
What if
can't
I'm
please
always
everybody.
this way? What if I'm talking about a quality
Right.
that I'll never shake? That'll always be part of it. Um, if that's such a big problem, how come I have friends? How come I have
Right.
a wife that loves me? If
Yeah.
if that's such a huge burden, you see, the easier way is to say, look, these are my strengths. No, I'm not perfect, but these are my strengths.
So you have to find your tribe.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you like to say to somebody listening to this podcast and probably he or she is going through an emotional struggle?
hmm I think of thoughts and feelings like clouds passing overhead. Um, you observe them, you figure out their message, and you let them go.
Hmm.
Not every thought is vital. Not every feeling is vital.
Yeah.
Um, life is beautiful and life is hard. I think of life like a roller coaster. Um, if I'm at the very peak, I know there's a low coming because that's how it all works. I can be right at the top, but it's going to come down.
Mhm.
And when it's down and I'm thinking like, oh my God, this is awful, this is the end of the world, guess what? It's going to come up. And it always does. You know, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, and it's life.
And it depends on our thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
I also tell my clients that thoughts are not 100% true. They are a story that your mind has created.
Yep.
And so treat them the same way.
Mm-hmm. The same with feelings. You know, I've had clients concerned that they were like crazy because they had some weird fantasies about something or someone. And, you know, my first question is, did you act on it? And of course, they're always going to say no. So what's the problem? It's a fantasy. You're going to be upset over a fantasy? Why?
Yeah, you can feel guilty.
Yeah, when you start acting on that stuff, okay, we need to talk, you know? But in the meantime, just because you have a thought that upset you or surprised you, that's not enough.
Yeah.
You are your
Mm.
behavior.
Oh. So you're not your thoughts, you're your behavior.
Yep.
That's something we should all remember.
hmm And the same with feelings. You're not your feelings either. Because
Right.
feelings can just come and go, and not every one of them is significant.
And is this something you learned after practicing psychotherapy
No, beforehand.
before?
Because, you know, for me, there was a period sort of between depression and work life. And a lot of it I got through that
Mm-hmm.
period. Because once I was doing psychotherapy, I was bringing a lot of myself to it, which caused me to work differently than a lot of my colleagues. Never apologized for it, but I had my own perspective.
Right.
You know, I had my own way of dealing with certain things. But no, that was already part of me.
So you were much younger when you realized that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And what advice would you give to your younger self?
As I mentioned earlier, I suffered from major depression when I was a teen, suicidal depression.
Mm.
And so I guess if I could go back, I would tell young Rick um, that in less than 5 years, you would stop seeing yourself as a victim and you would start making conscious choices and taking responsibility for those choices. Um, and from that point on to the rest of your life, you are going to be the happiest person you know.
Mhm.
And I wish I would have known that back then. I got here,
Yeah.
but that's the advice I would have given. Hang on, because you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, and I have read your books, and you mentioned that you try to learn all this stuff by yourself
Mhm.
and not necessarily with your therapist. Like,
Mhm.
I
Didn't
read
have a
something,
therapist. Yeah.
didn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is quite possible that some people can't afford therapy, like many
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
in India. And I saw that you mentioned Gestalt therapy,
The which therapy?
uh, Gestalt or
Oh,
something.
Gestalt. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think I mispronounced
Yeah.
it. So I'll repeat it.
Yep.
So I was reading your books and I saw that you learned about Gestalt therapy,
Mhm.
and I was impressed that you tried to get out of it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did you have that confidence even in such a low state of mind?
I didn't. um, I bought the book on Gestalt therapy because I knew it was psychology and I thought it might help. Gestalt therapy is probably the hardest therapy you'll ever experience. It's rough. It's um, 10 sessions and you healed.
Oh, really?
However, um, it's 10 sessions of torture, absolute torture. Um, and I thought that I was going to be someday. I was going to be a Gestalt therapist until I got Gestalt therapy myself, and thought, oh no, I can't. I couldn't do this to people. I know
Oh,
this is more probably a good therapy for therapists, but for the average person that walks into the room, no. And for depression, no, not appropriate for depression.
mm,
Um, the advantage of the book was that it had a lot of exercises, and the exercises were awareness focused. That you're going to do this to increase your awareness at any particular moment of time.
mm.
Um, and so I used to write those down on a piece of paper and I stuck it in my pocket. And if I was sitting waiting for a bus or something, I would pull it out and go, oh yeah, I can do that one. But it was a long way to go. It really was a long way to go. It was literally a couple of years
Mm.
um, before I had a big insight, which, I was sitting in a park reading a book on Ralph Waldo Emerson, reading his words, and it just hit me like a kick in the head. I used to think that we were all separate, and like everybody knew exactly what to do and exactly how to act except me, because you all had the manual and I didn't.
Mm.
And so there was a little bit of resentment when I would see somebody confident. It was like, here we go again, and I'd see somebody happy and I'd think, yeah, they're just putting that on. And what an awful place to be. But then in a moment, it occurred to me, we all start out the same. That I am the result of all of my experiences, and you're the result of all of your experiences. And that's what makes us different, is
Right.
we've had different experiences. But when we were born, we were the same, you know? And that caused me to feel a connection that I hadn't felt in a long time. It helped me feel connected to people. It helped me, I became more empathetic with people, you know, and and even more empathetic with myself,
Mm.
because I realized that I had this victim mentality that all of you were the reason for my depression, because all of you in life itself had treated me so poorly. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, what do I want to do? I mean, if I had a choice, what would I do? And why aren't I doing that? What steps do I need to take to get there? Because I think that's what I want to do. And systematically, I was looking at my life that way, thinking, my God, you were so stupid, And because it's really this simple, is just making conscious choices.
Taking responsibility for yourself.
Taking responsibility for those choices. If I make a mistake, hey, I apologize, but I was taking my life in my own hands for the first time. A couple of years earlier, I would have never, I would have never applied to college. I would have never met the Prime Minister of India. That wouldn't have happened. That would never have happened. I would never have taken my guitar and played and sang in front of people. I didn't. I didn't. That was something I did at home in my bedroom quietly. And but the idea of sitting in somebody's living room and playing guitar and singing a song was just a nightmare. And all of a sudden, I was doing that. All of a sudden, I was throwing myself out there. I was stretching my boundaries,
right?
And going beyond my comfort level, because there's a side to me that knew that's where my life is right beyond that comfort level.
Right. And even with my clients, I see that the person who is willing to put in the most effort usually sees the best results. So it's not just me or any therapist that they might be seeing.
Yep.
It's your personal responsibility to take yourself out of this negative emotions.
Sure. Yeah. Someone asked me once, when you meet a client, can you tell if they're going to succeed or not? And I said, yeah, I can. Because some people are clearly motivated. They've tried everything that they can, and they just realize, okay, I need help. And that's what they present. As opposed to the guy that comes in and says, yeah, I'm here because my wife says if I don't see a therapist, she's going to leave me. He's not going to do so hot. Right. Because he's not motivated.
Right.
He's doing it because he's trying to please his wife, or because his doctor said, I think that your problem is more psychosomatic than anything. And so, instead of treating you and giving you more pills and stuff, I'm going to suggest you see a therapist. You spot them like that. You spot those people just like that, because they're not motivated. They're there because they think they're supposed to be there.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Cormier, for being here and sharing your years of wisdom and with warmth and humor. And I would like to mention to our readers about your books, and which of your books would you like to recommend to our viewers?
I guess two in particular. One is probably the most popular book I've written, which is Mixed Nuts, or
we have it
What I've Learned Practicing Psychotherapy. It's basically psychotherapy, but definitely some humor in it, which is why it's called Mixed Nuts. And if you're curious about mental illness, that's the book. The other would be my last book, which is My Life Didn't Always Crack Me Up, My Journey from Darkness to Light. That's the one, if you're looking for inspiration or if you're looking for hope, that would be the book, because it tells my story from early on and to now. I have a friend who, was describing to her what I was writing while I was doing it. And I was telling her what I was writing and how hard it was, because I'm having to relive all of these, like the worst parts of my life, the worst memories of my life. And she looked at me and she said, "We'll at least have a happy ending." And I said, I am the happy ending.
Yeah, you really are. And of course, if you're ready to begin your emotional reset, you can find the emotional reset on Amazon. And I guess viewers can also find your book on Amazon.
Mixed Nuts is available from one publisher, and also American Bapu, which is about my relationship with India and Indians. And the newest book, My Life Didn't Always
Yeah.
Crack Me Up, is also available from a different publisher. And my books tend to cost the least amount on, what do you call it? Now I'm going to go
Flipkart?
blank.
Flipkart.
Flipkart. Thank you.
Yeah.
On Flipkart. Yeah, my books are available for the least amount of money on Flipkart.
Okay, that's good to know. And I'll be adding the links in the description below. And to everyone listening, be a little kinder to yourself today. Until next time, this is Dr. Ketki signing off from the Emotional Reset podcast. Take
Care
care
and
and
keep
keep
healing.
healing.